Okay. Welcome everyone to this to today's session. Today we are going to do Palo share configuration. Um, the first thing we need to do if we are given a brand new firewall, we are looking at it from a work environment perspective, or you bought a Palo firewall for your organization. So the first thing to do is to log into the command line. Or in some occasions, you can just plug in your laptop, you plug console cable to your laptop, and then you put the RJ45 cable port to the management port on the Palo. If it has default IP, you can browse it out from your browser. But the best practice is to go to the command line and check the default IP. And then, like we all know, that there are just there are three methods we can get access to most appliances management and then most appliances management and configuration interfaces. Is either we get through CLI, which is command line interface, or we get through GUI, which is graphical user interface, or we get through API, application programmability interface. These three methods we can get through the firewall, but most common one is GUI and command line. Some of the engineers or some of the administrators that have some level of automation capacity or skill set, they use API. So, but we've not discussed much about API now, but we'll discuss much about CLI and GUI. So let's go to our command line. We just click on the box. And then yesterday we started with a little bit of configuration. We just changed the default password. That's only what we did yesterday. And then we get through the GUI. So tonight we're going to change the path, the IP to static. We remove it from the DHCP. So how can we do that? The first is you put your credentials. The first one, which is default, is admin, and then click enter. You click enter, you put your IP. It has been changed. The default IP is admin. But we have changed it to admin at 123. Click enter. So if it's incorrect, admin at 123. Okay.
I think there's at.
Yeah,
I think the first one is uppercase A.
Uppercase A admin at
123.
Okay. Sometimes when we shut it down, it may repeat itself because we have not done much. So let's try our default password. Let's put admin, enter admin. Now it works. That is the IP, the password I put has been erased.
Okay.
Because we have not done much on it. So now I will need to put new IP now, a new password, which is admin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me say maybe the ticket. Admin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it did not contain it. Admin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not going to take it. Incorrect password. Okay, admin. Okay, I'll change the password now. The old password is admin. The new password is admin uppercase at 1, 2, 3. Enter. Admin at 1, 2, 3. Now we have successfully logged into the user interface. So this greater sign is indication that we are in user interface. This interface is majorly used to do some show command. Like now we can do show admins. If you have configured a lot of administrators on this device, on this machine, to show all the names. But if I click enter now, you can see we have only one administrator, which is admin. Today, we're going to configure other admins, and then we'll come back and check it. You see it populated there. So another thing we can quickly check is show interface management. Like I said before, all these commands, you don't need to memorize them. They're available online. You just need to know what you want to do at a particular time, and you get them done quickly. So now, if you look at this interface management, we have our IP address as 10.0.0.79. And then look at our default gateway is 10.1.10.0.0.1. So now we are going to move it from DHCP to static. So how can we do that? It's very, very simple. So the next thing we do is we do configure. Enter. Now, once you throw that configure command and click enter, it will take you to configuration mode. From here, you can do a lot of settings like IP address, the routing, the NATs, policy, zones, a lot you can get done here. So how can we set the IP address to the interface statically? The command is right here. So what we need to do is, number one, we need to tell the machine that we want it static. We set device. Another thing I will quickly show us now after this command is this. Most of the thing we need to use is right here, set device. Once you click tab, if the command is correct, it will complete it for you. Set device, see, configure. So now it shows that this command is valid. If it's not valid, the tab will not complete it. And then if you are confused, you don't know the next command, you press your shift key down, press command, it press question mark. Now, when you press the question mark, it will show you the next command that is available on that prompt. So if you look at it now, we do set device config. The next command should be system. So we pick system. So it can just serve as a way of reminding us. So once you push that, sometimes you can just forget, anybody can forget. Even the administrator that was working on this. Let me take this case. Give me 1 minute.
Oh, no.
Sorry for delay. So now anybody can forget, and like I said before. So as a way of recollecting or remind ourselves, you just press the shift key down and then press question mark. It will populate the next command. So now the command is set device config system. Now it will now ask us the type. Do you want to use DHCP or want to use static? So now we do type. We do type and push question mark. It will ask us, we want to use DHCP clients or static. This time around, we want to use static. So we put static there, and then we move on. Static. Statement is just to tell the machine kind of command, the kind of static IP we want to use. I hope it's clear. So we click enter. Now we have set to the IP address. The next command is to set again, device config system. This time around, we need to indicate our IP address, and then now we need to put IP. So what type of IP are we going to put here? It is IP of your laptop. If you are the administrator, you want to get web interface, because this information with this machine here on the management port, it is the administrator's laptop. Let me even indicate that now. Admin laptop. So now this machine is being managed from administrator laptop. So you need to put the IP address that it is in your subnet, that you can get your access to your web UI or get access to your browser. If you look at my event G, this is my subnet. My subnet is 10.0.0.0/24. So now I cannot assign IP address to this machine from other subnet. I'm not now, because this my laptop, this administration laptop is going to take a IP from this subnet. So we need to assign 10.0.0.0. So now out of my 24 subnets, I know that I'm not using 217 for now. I can assign it, because if you have assigned an IP, other machine on your subnet, there will be an error. So you look at your IP, even in the working environment, you need to get approval for IP, or you look at unused IP. You go to your IP scheme, you look at IP you have not used, because it will cause commotion if there is a duplication of IP on the system. All of them, because immediately you plug a machine on a network, there will be a broadcast, there will be a sharing of MAC address, they'll be forming convergence among themselves. So we need to be careful about that. So the next thing we need to do now is we put our net mask. Net mask, this is what Palo use. This is network mask. Okay, we put net mask, and then we put our network, the network IP. That is 255.255.255.0. This is our subnet mask. So the next thing here is we need to put the default gateway. It is optional. In this case, this is our lab, but in a working environment, you need to know your gateway. So I know my gateway 2. This is my default gateway. Put the default gateway, which is 10.0.0.1. Now the next thing for me to do is to click enter. So, and then the caveat is this: anytime you are working, and then you click a command, if it's an error, it will not go to the next level. So, and then in Palo, before any configuration can take place or be embedded in the machine, let me use that word. There's a word we need to use, which is commit. We need to commit the configuration to the memory of the machine. So we type commit, we click enter. So now, after this commit process is completed, that is the way we can see that this IP we assign really work or not. If the commit process fails, that means what we did is wrong. So let's wait a little bit after completion of that process, and then we'll move on. So before the completion of that commit process job is completed, let me quickly tell us another concept that they always ask about in interview. So we have candidate configuration, and commit configuration. If it is candidate configuration, it means that we have not committed it. It can be saved. There's a place in the GUI that you can save your configuration. That is a candidate configuration. So if we were asked in the interview, that is, what is candidate configuration? Candidate configuration means that the configuration that administrator is doing has not been committed to the memory of the firewall, period. The opposite is that it has been committed. So now, if you can see that the job is committed successfully. So now the next thing we can do to test our process is to do exit. You can exit from this interface. Then we should do show interface management, or we can, yes, show interface management. I will click enter. Now, when we do that, you see that the IP assigned has already been registered to the memory of the machine. So, so far so good. Any question, or can we move on?
So, on the so can we simply just say, because you mentioned something about interview, so yeah, can we simply say for the candidate configure, we can simply say changes that you make on the CLI, right?
No, not on the CLI, on the firewall, because the changes can also make from the GUI that have not been committed.
Okay. Okay.
So that's it. So now let's try this. If you look at this command, show routing. Show routing. Route. If I click enter here, look at it. We don't have any route. When we configure a route, we come back and throw this command again and we verify it. So without route, nothing can work on this firewall because the machine will not know where to send the data or the traffic to or the packet to. So we need to create a route where we're going to have a routing table. You know, don't forget we said it before that firewall is like it's like a router. So now let me ask this question quickly. It's an interview question. Which layer does firewall works? Is it layer 7, layer 6, layer 5, layer 4, 3, 2, 1. Which layer does firewall works?
3.
Okay. Stella said 3. Any objection?
It's a layer 3.
Layer 3, okay. Layer 3. Any objection? Okay, if there's no any other input, let's work on these two variables now. Okay, both of them said it's layer 3, which is wrong. Okay. Why? Let me prove it. If it's the layer 3, how can it work on TCP IP? How can it work on TCP and UDP, which is layer 4? How can it work on DNS, HTTP, FTP, which is layer 7, layer 5 and above? And then in a real world, we use TCP IP, which is just 4 layers. So to cut the story short, is firewall work from layer 1 to layer 7 because it processes the data and it works on layer 4, it works on layer 3, and then sometimes we use firewall as a layer 2 device. We'll talk about all this. And then once it's working as a layer 2 device, don't forget, there must be a plug. They must plug in something to the interface, which is layer 1 already. Because the cabling starts from layer 1. So the firewall can work as a layer 2. It can function as a layer 3, which you are going to demonstrate now. And it works from layer 4 and above. In other words, firewall from layer 1 to layer 7. All these advanced layer of firewall. Don't forget that we mentioned traditional firewall. Traditional firewall works from layer, just only a layer 3. Those are the traditional firewalls. The next generation firewall works from layer 1 to layer 7. And then there are a lot of functionalities that have been incorporated to latest firewalls now. We have ML, AI, and all the fancy words. So don't forget that because they've asked me several times about all this in interview. So now the next thing we need to do is to go to the GUI and browse our IP. How can we do that? We just need to open our browser, go to our browser, and then we type HTTPS column aqua
Please, can you go back a little bit?
217. Say that again. 17. And then we'll click enter. So when we click enter, this will populate. We click on advanced. It asks us, do you want to proceed? Because this certificate is not trusted, because this certificate is not signed by the firewall. So we say proceed. So now there we go. This is the GUI interface, and then we need to put our credentials to log in. So don't forget we have admin, and then we put our password, admin at 123, and then we click enter. Now, once your credential is correct, the firewall will open the page for you. And then don't forget, this one we are working on is version 10. They are in the 11th version now, but this is stable. So if somebody asks you in an interview, oh, guy, which version of firewall are you working on now? Just simply tell them that, oh, for now, I'm working on, okay, just say I'm working on 9.4 for .1, 8.1, anyone that comes to your mind. But don't say you are working on 10.0 or 9.0, because all this one, they call them trial versions. It's not used in production. I said it. This is the base version. It is trial. So let's move on. So now on the interface, look at the IP we assign, look at our default gateway, and then this is the version we are working on. So At this point, we have successfully configured the static IP to the management interface, and then we are in the GUI now. So right now, if we have a plan to put the firewall into production, what are the necessary things we need to do? Number one, we need to set IP on the interface. One, we need to create the zone. Two, we need to create a router, that is virtual router. We need to create a policy that will allow the traffic. We need to create NATs on this firewall before we can set it up and running. Can I come again on this thing I listed?
Yes.
Though we are going to work on them one by one, but I just analyzed what we are going to work on. So now, let's quickly go to, we go to network. So on the network tab, we see the interfaces. So this firewall has 8 interfaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 interfaces. And then don't forget, we have our cable plug to 2. Ethernet 1/1 and Ethernet 1/2. We need to pay attention to that, where we plug our interface, where we plug, which interface we plug our cables. Because if you plug your cables in 1, you are now configuring 4. So now you are now troubleshooting. You are troubleshooting nothing because you are working on a wrong interface. So now let's quickly do that. We are assigning IP to this interface. By doing that, what do we need to do? We just need to click on the right interface. This is our internal interface. We click on it, and then.
Excuse me, can we go back to the topology again?
This is topology.
So Ethernet 1/1, Ethernet 1/2. Okay.
Yeah, and then let me quickly do that. This one. Okay, I did this one before. Let me do this tie there. This is our LAN. I save it. And then this is our WAN. So now
the question I want to ask, sorry, the question I want to ask again, what we configured earlier was the management interface. That's to the admin laptop, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
We configure administrative access. Now, administrative access is different from LAN.
Yes.
We talked about this one before, where we talk about management plane and control plane. All the management processes, configurations, they pass through management plane, while the control plane deal with data. So now, there's what we call interface management. This is here. You click on it, and then we can hide it from here. So if you look at it, these are the interface management profile. This interface management profile simply means that any service we want to allow for the administrative purposes, this is where we do it. So now I can just write
Can you say that again? What do you say we do on this right here?
This interface management profile is just to enable some services that we want to permit the access to from administrative IP or administrative laptop. For example, now, if I ping now, ping will not work. But if I enable ping, enable SSH, enable HTTP, all those things will be working from that interface.
Okay.
And another functionality this thing has is Let me write this one first. Another functionality this thing has is now, if I want to permit external IP apart from administrator IP, I can add it here. Like now, if I want to allow you from your house to get access to this firewall, I will add your IP here. This is what they call permitted IP. Okay, so now what we just need to do, we just enable ping. We enable ping, and then we click OK. So now, until we assign this management profile to particular interface before it can function. If you don't assign it to a particular interface, it will not function there. You see what I mean as we move on. So the first thing we need to do, if somebody asks you, oh, if I give you a firewall now, what do you need to do first? If a brand new firewall, what I need to do is to get the interface up and running, configure the interface, put IP there, boom. So now that's what we're going to do now. We click on the interface. Now let me quickly explain here. This is interview questions. They usually ask, tell me how Palo Alto can be deployed. Tell me how Palo Alto can be deployed. Let me analyze it one by one. It can be deployed as a tab. It can be deployed as a HA. It can be deployed as a virtual wire. It can be deployed as a layer 2 and layer 3. Okay, in the tab, how does it function in the tab? Tab means it's a just transparent mode. It works in transparent mode. What does that mean? That there's a connected network already, but we're using our firewall, Palo Alto, just to tap into the network, to filter the traffic, to work all the functionality of the firewall without interrupting the network. It works in transparent mode. That's the tab. On the HA, it works in the HA deployment. That means it works in higher availability deployment. That is, we have a pair of firewalls that can be set up side by side as active, passive, or active as case may be. That is HA. On virtual wire means a bump in the wire, bumps in the wire. What does this mean is we passively monitor the traffic without changing the subnet. That is virtual wire. And the other deployment mode is layer 2. This firewall can work as a layer 2. That is, we are not going to assign IP to the interfaces. We are going to use layer 2, and then we cut the wire into 2, plug them in between like a switch. That is why I was saying which layer the firewall functions. You know, I mentioned layer 2 the other time, and then the firewall can work in a layer 3 deployment, which requires IP address. In layer 2 deployment, it doesn't require IP address. Layer 3 deployment, it requires IP address. Tap mode, no IP. HA, no IP, or IP. I will show you what I mean. Virtual wire, no IP. So layer 2, no IP. Only layer 3 and basically on HA, I will show that, but it's optional. So based on that fact, do you have any conviction or any question to ask on this? If you want to learn anything deeply, learn all this stuff, they ask it on interview almost every time.
Can you say that interview question again? Can you just? Okay,
this is how they already rephrase it. How can the firewall, how Palo Alto can be, what are the methods the firewall or the Palo Alto can be deployed?
How can Palo be deployed in the
Yes.
lab, right?
Yeah.
In a production lab.
Yes, in production environment.
Okay.
How can it be deployed? So you will now explain that it can be deployed in the tab mode, it can be deployed in the HA mode, it can be deployed on the virtual wire, it can be deployed in layer 2 or layer 3. So if you want to deep dive on it, you now explain them little by little. So let's move on. So now, but on this our lab, we're going to work on layer 3. We click on layer 3. And then once you click layer 3, you know, there's a lot of labs, a lot of tabs here. Don't get confused here. The major one here is IPv. We are working on IPv4. This is IPv6. This is SD1. Nothing concerns you with all these IPv6 and SD1. SD1 is a different ball game. We'll explain that one a little bit, but at least you have a flair of it. And the advanced, we work on advanced a little bit too. So what we need to do here is we check our virtual router. We need to attach this interface to a virtual router, because if you don't attach virtual router to this interface, when the traffic is coming, the packet will not know the destination. So we click on the virtual router, but there's a default that has been configured. We click on default. We had it to default, but the zone, security zone, we click on the drop down. We don't have any zone now. We just need to click on new. So when you click on it, this page will pop up. So name it. So what I'm going to name this one is trust zone. Trust zone. Open, you click OK. It's populated here, and then you click on IPv4. On IPv4, see this button, add. See this button, you click on this add, you input your IP there. Our IP address is 192.168.10. You can assign .1 there because we are using /24.1. And then don't forget to put /24 or / your subnet /24. Then this firewall is very easy to manage. Look at the example here. I don't know, you can see my screen very well. You see it here?
So they always put it like that?
It's not always. No, okay. It's like this. But if you don't know what you're doing, it will be there, you won't see it. Yeah, it's like this. Most of the places you configure IP, they will put something like this here to give you an overview. Okay. So now, the next thing to do is to click on this advanced. You know, we configure management profile before. So if you click on this drop down, it will pop up. Look at it here. We select it. This is MTU. By default, it's 1500. Does anybody know anything about MTU?
So maximum transmission unit.
Yes, maximum transmission unit. By default, it's 1500. Yeah. But most of the time, you don't need to touch it. But if you look at the default, it shows that it's between 556 to 1500. Okay. So, but it's 1500 by default. So we just click OK here. Once you click OK, if what you are doing is not right, I will show you another stuff now. It will not fly. So the next thing we need to do is to go to the 1/2 interface. I just wanted to do it quickly so that we don't spend much time tonight. So you click on the drop down, select layer 3, and then select the virtual router, click on default, select.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Select this time around, it's not going to be trust zone. Because if you look at our topology, this is 1. Our 1 is on trust. And if you want me to even edit it, I can edit it and put trust and untrust there. So here we need to create another zone, which is on trust. I believe everything we are doing tonight is making some sense. If it doesn't make any sense or it doesn't give you any meaning, ask question, because there's no crime in that. Because I will presume that we understand if there's no question. So now the IP for the on trust is 150.1.1. We can put .1 too, or we put .2 as case may be. We have flexibility of IPs. So we put 151.1.1.2. And then on this interface too, we can assign our management profile. This one will enable us to ping that interface in case we are troubleshooting it. So we click OK. Now we have clicked OK, but look at this interface, is gray out. It gray out because we have not committed it. So what we need to do is to press commit tab here. If you go to your top right corner here, you see commit sign, commit tab. Now look at what the team wrote there. There are pending configuration changes. Please commit. So now I need to commit it to the database of the firewall. In production, you need to click validation, but this is our lab. We need to commit.
So in real production, you have to
need to validate it. Validate it.
Validate. Okay.
Because when you do validate, if there's an error, it will indicate it.
Oh.
Yes, it's like verify. So now, when we do this, after this process, once it's completed, we'll look at other little things we can do, and then we call it a day. But the more you play around with it, the more you get familiar with it. It's not difficult, but it just needs being around it, romancing it, and play around with it. It's like playing with. Before many people have phones, it's like complex device. But now, once you have it, you start playing with it. Me, I've not used iPhone before, but once I got one of recent. It's friendly. It's user friendly than Samsung. That's my opinion. But before I was looking at it like something that's complex. So look at the percentage, 99%. We can close it, but it will show 100% and to indicate either failed or successful. Was it successful? All these our links, our interface will turn to green. That's the indication that the interface is working properly. Look at it. It said commit completed successfully. Configuration committed successfully. Close. So now look at our link. It turns green. Now, part of our task, we have carried out some of them. We have configured the interfaces. Now we need to we have configured the interfaces. We have configured the zones. We have configured trust zone and non-trust zone. And then now we need to go to our virtual router. Our virtual router is under network tab. Network tab, you go to virtual router. You click on virtual router. So if you look at virtual router, you see that we have attached two interfaces to it. You can add your own if you want, but there's a default. So this default, you click on it, it will take you here. Don't forget, these are the protocol we have touched based on the routers. RIP, OSPF, OSPF version 3, BGP, multicast, redistributing profile, static routes. We've touched based on all this. For you to know that the firewall itself, you need a router to route packets. But we are most of the environment, they use static routes. but some environment use dynamic routing. It's not difficult. We replay it and then we play around it. So now this is our static route. To have our static route, we need to click on this add and then we name it. Let's name it virtual router 1. That's the name. For destination, our destination can be any, that is 0.0.0.0/0 means any subnet. And then the interface will be what? Because we are going outside, our internet interface, outside facing interface is /2, which is this one. We click it, and then it will populate the IP automatically. No, it will it will not populate the IP when we are doing this NAT. That's where that one will happen. So now it will ask us to indicate what is our next op, and our next op would be 150.1.1.1, which is the next. I'm going to configure this to be our next op. This one is going to be .1. Let me quickly put it here before I forget. I hope it will roll. So if it's not rolling, let me know. Or if it causes confusion.
Yeah, but I still think we need an hands-on, like the way you're doing it now. We need to be on our own lab too, to be practicing with you.
Yeah, but I did that yesterday. I told us how we can get our own lab set up, and if you have any challenges, I can come in from there. And I said there's tons of videos on YouTube that can walk you through side by side, because the Indian guy said it's $100 for him to set it up and put all the nodes, because apart from setting it up, you need all the devices in it. So let's move on that. So now our next op is 150.1.1.1. That's our next op. So now look at the administrative distance. It's 10 to 240. We are not going to touch that one. Our metric is 10. Multicast, all these are default. You leave it on default and you click OK. Now, what is the next thing we need to do here? We click OK. Oh, so now we have completed some major part of this configuration. So what is the next step? After this basic configuration, we now go to policy to create our NATs. What is NAT? I will quickly touch base on NATs because we have not said anything about NAT before. Does anybody have overview about NAT before? You can say something about NATs. Let me go to our panes. Okay, this is where I'm going to stop the recording because it will be too long to watch stuff. Okay, so maybe what I need to do is we just need to stop it right here, because NAT is a different topic that we need to explain deeply. One of the major questions that usually out of everything interviews, at least almost all of them, we have about NATs. So it is what we need to know about. It is what everybody is expected to know. So what is NAT? Does anybody have any overview or idea about NAT?
I think this is where we talk about this